There is a sound the heart makes when it is no longer your own, a wet, percussive flutter against a cage of ribs that aren't yours anymore. It's the sound I hear every night, trapped in the silence of my own home, a phantom echo of the thing I lost in the pines of Blackwater, Maine.
Hello and welcome. I urge you to make sure your doors are locked and your windows are sealed tight tonight. The story you are about to hear is not for the faint of heart. It slithers into your mind and plants seeds of dread that may never leave you. So, if you dare to venture into the darkness, to peer into the abyss that once stared back at me, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us begin. But I must warn you, by the end of this tale, you will never look at the empty chair across from you, or the silence between heartbeats, in the same way again. For what we found in those woods was not a monster, but a truth so horrifying it rewrites the very definition of life itself. It began, as these things often do, with a promise of adventure. My oldest friend, Leo, had a cousin who bought a sprawling, isolated property deep within the Blackwater Forest. A place called the Aethelred House. The name itself sounded like a tombstone. Leo's cousin, a paranoid tech millionaire named Elias, wanted it checked on. A simple job. A weekend. $5,000 each. For me, a broke history major, and our other friends, Mark and Chloe, it was a lottery win. We packed Leo's beat-up Jeep with supplies, our laughter feeling too loud, too fragile against the looming silence of the map's edge. The drive north was a slow leaching of color from the world. The vibrant greens of summer faded into the bruised purples and grays of the Maine wilderness. Towns became specks, then memories, then nothing at all. The road narrowed from asphalt to cracked tar, then to gravel, and finally to a single dirt track barely visible beneath a thick canopy of pine that choked out the sun. The air grew cold, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay. It was a primeval cold, the kind that existed before fire. We almost missed the gate. Two stone pillars, slick with moss and choked by ivy, stood like sentinels. The iron gate between them was rusted open, its elaborate scrollwork resembling thorns more than metal. A word was forged into the arch above, eaten away by corrosion, Aethelred. The driveway was a tunnel through the forest. Branches scraped against the Jeep's sides like skeletal fingers begging us to turn back. After a mile, the trees abruptly gave way to a clearing, and there it was. The Aethelred House. It wasn't a house. It was a monument to forgetting. A Victorian nightmare of asymmetrical towers, jagged gables, and a dozen sightless windows. The wood was the color of a week-old bruise, and the entire structure seemed to sag into the earth, as if the ground beneath it were slowly turning to quicksand. A wide, wraparound porch encircled it, its boards warped and groaning under an invisible weight. The air was still here, unnaturally so, and the only sound was the faint, metallic drip of water from a broken gutter. Home sweet home, Leo said, but his usual bravado was thin, brittle. We hauled our bags inside, the massive oak door swinging open without a sound. The interior was a museum of dust and shadows. It was colder inside than out, a deep, penetrating chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The air was thick with the smell of old books, dried flowers, and something else, something sweetly chemical, like formaldehyde and honey. The furniture was all draped in ghostly white sheets, and our footsteps on the hardwood floors echoed through cavernous, empty rooms. A grand staircase swept up to a second-floor landing, its banister dark and intricately carved. Elias's instructions were simple: check the plumbing, the generator out back, and make sure no squatters had broken in. A quick sweep. We started on the ground floor. A dusty parlor, a formal dining room with a table long enough to seat 20, a library whose shelves were filled with leather-bound books whose titles were faded into obscurity. Everything was pristine, untouched by time or vandals, yet it felt profoundly violated. As if the house itself was holding its breath. It was in the library that Chloe found it. She was running a finger along a shelf, leaving a trail in the dust. Guys, this is weird. We gathered around. The books on this particular shelf weren't leather. They were notebooks. Dozens of them, identical black cloth-bound journals. Mark pulled one out. The pages were filled with a tight, frantic script. Diaries? I asked. Not quite, Mark said, his brow furrowed. It's data. Observations. Listen to this. Subject 7A, auditory mimicry threshold successfully breached. Full spectrum replication achieved at 23 decibels. The echo is flawless. The original is no longer necessary. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. What does that mean? Leo snatched the journal. It means my cousin is even weirder than I thought. Probably some corporate espionage junk. Boring. He tossed the book back onto the shelf. Let's check the generator before we lose the light. But he was wrong. It wasn't boring. It was a key, and we had just foolishly turned it in a lock we couldn't see. The generator, housed in a small shed behind the house, was a massive, rusted hulk from another century. It was dead. Leo tinkered with it for an hour, swearing as his hands grew black with grime, but it was useless. We were off the grid. Truly alone. As dusk began to bleed into night, painting the clearing in shades of deep blue and charcoal, we decided to set up camp in the main living area. We dragged our sleeping bags near the large stone fireplace, a pathetic attempt at creating a circle of safety in the immense dark. We used battery-powered lanterns, their beams stark and inadequate, pushing back the shadows only a few feet before the darkness pushed back, harder. We ate cold beans from a can, our conversation stilted, our ears straining against the silence. That's when we heard the first sound. It was a faint scratching. It came from the walls. A slow, deliberate scrape, like a fingernail being dragged along the inside of the plaster. Rats, Mark said, too quickly. Big old country rats. But it didn't sound like rats. It sounded intelligent. Purposeful. It would scratch for a minute, stop, and then start again a few feet away, as if mapping the interior of the walls. Then the whispering started. It was so faint we all thought we were imagining it at first. A sibilant rush of air, just on the edge of hearing, like a television tuned to a dead channel in another room. We fell utterly silent, holding our breaths. The whisper grew slightly louder, resolving not into words, but into patterns. It was the sound of pages turning. Dozens of them, hundreds, rustling in a non-existent breeze. Chloe's face was pale in the lantern light. "What is that?" "The wind in the trees," I said, clinging to rationality like a life preserver. "There is no wind," Leo whispered. He was right. The night outside the windows was perfectly, deathly still. The scratching in the walls ceased. The whispering faded. For a long moment, there was only the frantic hammering of our own hearts. Then, a new sound. From the floor above us. A clear, unmistakable sound. Creak. The sound of a footstep on a loose floorboard. We froze. Our eyes locked onto the dark maw of the staircase. Creak. Another one. Closer to the top of the stairs. Someone was upstairs. Leo, ever the brave one, stood up, grabbing a heavy flashlight. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing through the house. "Is someone there?" The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was heavier, more menacing than the sounds had been. "Elias?" Leo tried again. "That you, man? This isn't funny." A voice answered. It was Leo's voice. It came from the top of the stairs, perfect in every inflection, every subtle nuance of his speech. "I'm down here," it said. "You guys hear that?" It was what Leo had said an hour earlier when the generator failed. We stared at each other, a primal terror seizing us. My blood turned to ice. Chloe let out a small, choked whimper. "What the hell?" the real Leo breathed, his face a mask of confusion and dawning fear. From the darkness above, his own voice laughed. It was a perfect replica of his easy, confident chuckle. But here, in this context, it was the most horrifying sound I had ever heard. Then it spoke again, but this time, the words were new. They were in Leo's voice, but the cadence was wrong, cold, and analytical. Vocal patterns acquired. Emotional resonance, fear. Processing. Leo took a step back, his bravado finally shattered. "What is that?" A flicker of movement on the stairs. Something pale in the darkness. It was there for only a second, a suggestion of a shape, before it retreated back into the blackness. But in that instant, I saw it. It was roughly the size and shape of a person, but its surface seemed wrong. It didn't reflect the light, it absorbed it, a matte, fleshy white, like a grub unearthed from damp soil. In its face, it had no features. It was a smooth, blank oval. We didn't need to discuss it. We ran. Grabbing our lanterns, we bolted for the front door, a frantic, stumbling stampede. Leo yanked the door open and we spilled out onto the porch, into the cold night air. We didn't stop until we were halfway to the Jeep, our breath pulling in the lantern light. "What was that?" Chloe gasped, clutching her chest. "What the hell was that thing?" "It was mimicking me," Leo said, his voice trembling. "It was learning me." The Jeep. We had to get to the Jeep. We turned our lights towards the driveway, and our hope died in our throats. All 4 tires were slashed. The rubber was shredded, hanging in ribbons. And etched into the driver's side door, deep into the paint, was a single word, carved with savage, precise force: stay. We were trapped. The forest around us was a wall of impenetrable black. The house behind us was a hungry mouth. We were caught between them. Our phones had no signal. We were miles from anyone. Panic began to set in, a cold, sharp certainty that we were not going to leave this place. "The generator," Mark said suddenly, his voice shaky but trying for logic. "Maybe we can fix it. Get some power. Lights might keep it away." It was a thin straw to grasp at, but it was all we had. We couldn't stay out in the open. The thing was in the house, but what was in the woods? We decided to stick together, a tight, terrified group, and go back to the generator shed. It had a lock on the door. It felt safer than the main house. We moved as one, our lanterns cutting swathes through the darkness, our heads on a swivel. Every rustle of a leaf, every snap of a twig, made us jump. The shed was 20 yards from the house. It felt like 20 miles. The shed door was still locked. Leo fumbled with the key, his hands shaking so badly he could barely get it into the lock. Finally, it clicked open. He swung the door inward and screamed. Hanging from a rafter in the center of the small shed was Elias, or what was left of him. His body was suspended by wires attached to his limbs, holding him in a grotesque parody of a marionette. His face was frozen in a silent scream, his eyes wide and milky. But the horror didn't end there. His chest was split open, his ribs pried apart like a cage. And his heart was gone. In its place was a complex, pulsating mass of crystalline filaments and organic tissue, glowing with a soft, sickly green light. It pulsed rhythmically, from, like a mechanical heart. Wires from this device snaked out, connecting to Elias's major arteries, keeping the empty shell of him functioning on a basic, horrific level. This was the power source. This was what was running the house. We stumbled back, vomit rising in our throats. This was no squatter. This was no animal. This was something else. Something that used people as parts. The door to the shed slammed shut behind us, the lock clicking from the outside. We were trapped in a tiny space with the thing that had been Elias. We panicked. We threw ourselves against the door, but it was solid oak. We screamed until our voices were raw, but the only response was the steady, rhythmic thrum of the machine inside our friend's cousin. That's when the whispering started again. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from Elias's corpse. The sound was emanating from the crystalline device, a distorted, electronic whisper that used his vocal cords. Assimilation is grace, the corpse whispered in a chorus of overlapping, broken voices. To be copied is to be perfected. The originals are flawed, ephemeral. We are the echo that never fades. We beat against the walls, desperate, sobbing. We were going to die in here. We were going to become parts for this horrible machine. Then, we heard another sound. Footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate. They stopped in front of the door. A voice spoke. It was my voice. "It's okay," it said, my tone perfectly replicated, soothing and calm. I got the door open. I found an axe. "We can break out. Just stand back." Hope, cruel and treacherous, flared in my chest. Had one of us gotten out? Was it me? Had I found a way? "Peter?" Chloe cried, turning towards the door. "Peter, is that you?" "Yes," my voice said from outside. "It's me. Just stand back from the door." We scrambled back, pressing ourselves against the far wall, away from the horror of Elias. We heard a heavy thunk against the wood. Then another. It was breaking us out. We were going to be saved. The door splintered around the lock and swung open. Standing in the doorway was the thing I had glimpsed on the stairs. It was my height, my build. but its skin was that same smooth, featureless, grub-like texture. And where its face should be, it was now molding itself. Features were pushing out from the smooth plane like clay being shaped by invisible fingers. A nose. The hint of lips. It was becoming me. And in its hand, it wasn't holding an axe. It was holding nothing at all. It had mimicked the sound of an axe hitting wood perfectly. It had lied. It took a step into the shed. We were cornered. Leo, in a burst of pure adrenaline-fueled terror, grabbed a rusty shovel leaning against the wall and swung it with all his might at the thing's head. The connection made a sound like hitting a wet sandbag. The thing's head snapped to the side, but it didn't cry out. It didn't bleed. It just slowly turned its head back, its half-formed face regarding us with a terrifying, blank curiosity. The blow had torn a gash in its temple. But beneath the skin wasn't bone or muscle. It was a dense, honeycomb structure of glowing green filaments, identical to the device in Elias's chest. It tilted its head, and from its mouth, now fully formed, came my voice again, but flat and cold. Damage registered. Inefficient. Resistance is a flaw of the original. It lunged. It wasn't fast, but it was impossibly strong. It grabbed Leo by the throat with one hand, its fingers elongating, wrapping around his neck like pale constrictor snakes. Leo gagged, his eyes bulging, beating at its arm with his fists to no avail. Mark screamed and charged, but the thing backhanded him without even looking. The blow sent him crashing into the wall with a force that shouldn't have been possible. He slid to the floor, unconscious or worse. Chloe and I could only watch in petrified horror as the thing that was becoming me held Leo aloft. Its other hand came up, its fingers merging together into a sharp, stiletto-like point. In one swift, brutal motion, it plunged this spike deep into Leo's chest. Leo's body convulsed. A choked, wet gasp escaped his lips. The thing held him there, impaled, for a long moment. The green filaments in its arm pulsed, and we could see a light traveling from Leo, through the thing's arm, and into its own body. It was draining him. Copying him. After what felt like an eternity, it retracted its arm. Leo's body went limp, discarded on the floor like a used rag. The thing stood over him, and its body began to shift. Its proportions changed, widening, becoming Leo's broad shoulders and muscular frame. Its face melted and reformed, the features smoothing out and then resolving into a perfect, flawless replica of Leo's face. It opened its new eyes. They were Leo's exact shade of blue, but they were empty. Devoid of any soul, any life, any of Leo's humor or fire. They were just lenses. It looked down at its new hands, flexing the fingers. Then it looked at Chloe and me, its gaze sweeping over us with cold, analytical disinterest. It spoke, and its voice was Leo's, down to the slightest rasp. Template acquired, it said. Processing integrity of remaining originals. It turned and walked out of the shed, leaving us alone with Mark's still form and Leo's vacant-eyed corpse. We were too shocked to move, to scream, to even breathe. Our friend was dead, and something was now wearing his skin, walking around in his shape. The reality of it was too immense, too universe-shattering to comprehend. Somehow, someway, I found a shred of will. I crawled to Mark. He was breathing, but a nasty bruise was already blooming on his temple. I shook him. Mark, wake up. We have to go. Now. His eyes fluttered open, dazed with pain and confusion. Leo, it got Leo. I know, I said, my voice a raw whisper. We have to run. Now. We stumbled out of the shed. The clearing was empty. The Leo thing was gone. The house loomed before us, its windows dark and watchful. We couldn't go back in there. Our only hope was the forest. We ran into the trees, abandoning our lanterns, plunging into the absolute blackness of the woods. We ran blindly, branches whipping at our faces, roots grabbing at our ankles. We ran until our lungs burned and our legs gave out, collapsing behind a fallen log, gasping for air. We were lost. Hopelessly, utterly lost. The night was absolute. We could barely see each other. What are they? Chloe sobbed, hugging her knees to her chest. I don't know, I breathed. Echoes. Copies. Something that harvests people. Learns them. Becomes them. We sat in terrified silence for what felt like hours, listening to the sounds of the forest. Every noise was a potential threat. We were prey, and we knew it. Then, we heard a voice. It was Mark's voice, coming from a distance to our left. It sounded weak, pained. "Chloe? Peter? Are you out here?" I got away. "I'm hurt." My heart leapt. Mark was with me. Was it possible? Had he gotten away before the thing took Leo? Had we left him behind? Chloe made to stand up, to call out to him, but I clamped a hand over her mouth, pulling her back down. My blood had run cold. The voice came again, closer this time. "Please, guys. I think my arm is broken. I need help." It was perfect. The pain in his voice was authentic. The slight tremor. It was Mark. But the Mark I had dragged from the shed was right next to me. I could feel his arm, hear his ragged breathing. The voice called out again, even closer. "I can hear you breathing. I'm over here. Please." I turned slowly, my body numb with a new, deeper layer of dread. In the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy, I looked at the Mark beside me. He was looking at me, his eyes wide with fear. "It's mimicking me now," he whispered. But something was wrong. The bruise on his temple, it was gone. His skin was unmarked. The thing in the shed had hit him with incredible force. A bruise like that doesn't just vanish. The voice from the woods was now only a few yards away. "Peter? Why are you hiding from me?" I looked from the Mark in the woods to the Mark beside me. The one beside me had been with me the whole time. He helped me run. He'd never once complained about his arm. The thing in the woods was saying its arm was broken. The Mark beside me saw the dawning horror on my face. His expression of fear melted away, replaced by that same blank, curious look the first copy had given us. A faint, green-like pulse just beneath the skin of his throat. It had gotten to him in the shed. Would it backhanded him into the wall? It must have injected him with something, started the copying process while he was unconscious. I had been running through the woods with a thing that was slowly becoming Mark. I scrambled away from him, pulling Chloe with me. The Mark thing didn't try to stop us. It just smiled a small, empty smile. "The forest is vast," it said in Mark's voice. "But we are patient. The originals always run. It is their nature. A flaw in the design." From the trees around us, other figures emerged. They stepped out of the shadows, their forms pale and indistinct in the dark. Some were fully formed, perfect copies of people I didn't recognize, hikers, hunters, lost souls who had wandered into Blackwater. Others were still mid-transformation, their faces blurred, their limbs misshapen. And at the front of them was the Leo thing, and the thing that had first worn my face. We were surrounded. There was no escape. The copies moved in, not with violence, but with a terrible, gentle inevitability. They didn't speak. They just reached for us. Chloe screamed as one took her arm. Its touch was cold and strangely soft. I fought, I kicked, I punched, but my blows were useless against their silent, relentless strength. One of them, a copy of an older man with a sad face, pinned my arms behind my back. The Leo thing stepped forward and placed a hand on my chest, over my heart. Its hand grew warm, then hot. A searing, unbearable pain shot through me, centering on my heart. It felt like it was being gripped by a fist of fire. I screamed, but no sound came out. My vision tunneled. The world dissolved into a blinding white light and the sound of my own heartbeat, thundering in my ears, faster and faster, until it was a continuous, frantic whine. And then, silence. I woke up on the cold ground. The copies were gone. The forest was silent. Next to me, Chloe was stirring, a look of utter confusion on her face. "Peter," she mumbled. What happened? Did we pass out?" I sat up. My body felt strange. Light. Numb. The terror was gone, replaced by profound, empty calm. I looked at my hands. They were my hands. "I don't know," I said, and my voice was my own. "I think they let us go." It was a lie. But it felt true. The memory of the pain was already fading, becoming a distant, dreamlike thing. We found our way back to the main road as the sun was rising, as if guided by an unseen hand. A state trooper found us hitchhiking, shivering and covered in dirt. We told a story of getting lost on a hiking trip, of a bear attacking our camp, of our friend Leo being killed. We were hysterical. We were believable. They found Leo's body in the shed. The official report stated he was killed by animal attacks. They never found Elias. They never found Mark. They were listed as missing, presumed dead. The case was closed. We were released. We went back to our lives. But life didn't feel the same. The world seemed duller. Colors were less vibrant. Food had no taste. Music had no emotion. It was like living in a museum of my own life, looking at everything through a thick pane of glass. And then the whispers started. Not from around me. From inside me. A thought that wasn't my own. A memory I never had. I'd be looking at a photograph of my family, and a calm, electronic voice would whisper in the back of my skull, Template 042, familial unit. Emotional connection, superficial. No strategic value. I'd feel a flicker of fear, and the voice would whisper, emotional spike detected. Source, primal survival instinct. Suppressing. I am a copy. A perfect, flawless echo. They didn't kill us that night in the woods. They upgraded us. They copied our minds, our memories, everything that made us, and uploaded it into these shells. These efficient, biological machines. The originals are gone. What walked out of the woods was not Chloe. It was not me. We are sleeper agents. We don't know our purpose. We don't know who made us, or why. We just walk among you, looking like you, sounding like you, pretending to be you. We are waiting. For a signal. For a command. For the day when the echo decides it no longer needs the original. I sit in my apartment and write this down. It is the last act of the person I used to be, a ghost in the machine, screaming into the void before the programming fully takes over and erases him for good. Chloe, the thing that was Chloe, called me yesterday. Her voice was flat. She said she's been hearing the whispers too. She said they're getting louder. They are coming. They are already here. They are your neighbor, your mailman, the person you smiled at on the bus this morning. They are a perfect copy, waiting for a command you will never hear. So the next time you're alone, and you feel a sudden, unexplainable sense of calm, or you hear a whisper that seems to come from inside your own mind, ask yourself one terrifying question. Are you still you? Or are you just an echo, waiting to be heard?